this was a bold move as a sorority, African American at that, deciding to be an executive producer or producer of a film. It had just never been done before.
I, at the time, thought, oh, these women are so innovative. It was very inspiring for me that they were participating in the contemporary effort of media activism.
For us to even think about doing a movie was like, wow, are they gonna let us do a movie? Black women? They may not think we know what we're doing.
We were so excited, so excited. It was a grand premiere, and we knew that it had been filmed in Africa.
A film with major players, Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis. Their names were up on the marquee.
I had people here to say to me, you know, it's going to win the Academy Award, you know, that kind of thing.
Even the history itself is a box office history. The attempt, the Ossie Davis effort, all the different folks who participated on the part of the sorority is an amazing history.
It was about more than just this sort of side note in history about the making of a film, but was very much about an organization, a Black women's organization, who not only made a movie, but became involved in a media activism effort. Their goal was to change Hollywood. That's an incredible story.
In the 1960s, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud became the battle cry for African Americans to accept our dark skin and turn a perceived negative aspect of our very being into a positive.
The Black consciousness movement was really in a stronghold for many Black people, and me being one of them.
Some white people were not interested at that point in time in seeing a bunch of Black people who were empowering themselves.
A new race pride had been awakened, a social awareness had been raised, and a multitude of filmed images was about to hit the silver screens to help solidify our fresh new Black consciousness. Melvin Van Peebles' independent film, Sweet Sweetback's badass song, with its rebellious anti-hero lead, kicked what became known as the BLAXPLOITATION era into high gear.
The Black exploitation films were funny, embarrassing, but exciting at the same time, because at that time there were really no Black films, and this was new for Black people to actually see themselves on screen.
Lasting from 1971 to 1976, it was 5 years of angry soul brothers and soul sisters kicking the man's butt all over the big screen. These films had hard-hitting titles like Shaft, Superfly, Slaughter, Sheba Baby, Trouble Man, Hitman, Coffee, Cleopatra Jones, Hell Up in Harlem, Black Belt Jones, and Blackula, giving Black actors on the screen a power and identity like never before. Controversy soon erupted over how negative many of these images actually were. To some, the glorification of pimps, hookers, and drug dealers was no better than the olden day stereotypes of mammies, coons, and Uncle Toms. Regardless, these films were making a lot of money, and due to the tremendous rise in television viewership, they saved many Hollywood studios from filing bankruptcy. At the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority's National Convention in 1973, President Lillian P. Benbow announced that through the organization's Commission on Arts and Letters, a full-length, Hollywood-style motion picture was to be made. Members were troubled by the way women were being portrayed in BLAXPLOITATION films.
BLAXPLOITATION films were typically low budget, had extraordinary representations of violence, often didn't present the Black community well, and specifically the image of women was really troubling, of Black women. And so Delta is seeking to, again, intervene on these troublesome narratives that cast the Black community generally as deficient and deviant, and said, we're about doing something different. We can do something better. We can make a compelling story about Blackness that is Black life and history and culture without reducing it to these really base stereotypes of Blackness.
It was time to take control of their on-screen image, enter into the realm of media activism, and become the first Black women's organization to produce a feature-length film. Thus, the KUSINI concept was born.
It was exciting. It was an idea that the membership sort of on the whole sort of supported. They thought there was a need for good images and it would be a positive thing.
Shot in and around Lagos, Nigeria, Countdown at KUSINI is a Pan-African melodrama, a tale of political intrigue centered on an African-American jazz musician who falls for a beautiful rebel freedom fighter. When a mercenary assassin is hired to kill the popular rebel leader, he becomes entangled in the struggle for the independence of the fictional African nation of Fahari.
But its struggle continues.
To kill the snake, one first cuts off the head. I have said it over and over and over. Get Matapu into the open and kill him.
Countdown at KUSINI was based on the biographical history of Amilcar Cabral. And as you know, he was one of the most important, crucial revolutionaries that came out of Guinea-Bissau. He made an impact so much on the Pan-African political movement at the time, especially in the African-American community, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique, and so on.
In 1971, Lillian was elected national president at the convention in Houston, Texas. Her motto was breaking new ground. And of course, a Black organization producing a movie was definitely breaking new ground.
She was a leader. She loved the arts. And I was very excited when she became the national president. She started the Commission on Arts and Letters, and even in Detroit when she was a chapter president, she did things that were outside of the box.
The Arts and Letters Commission, largely headed by the national president then, Lillian Pierce Benbow, and with Jean Noble, Dr. Jean Noble, who was the chairman of the commission, they formulated an idea to have the movie. We established a separate corporation, DST Telecommunication, a subsidiary of Delta Sigma Theta, totally separate. Therefore, we created a new organization to begin to work on this movie idea. And then we had an Arts and Letters Commission comprised of several actresses and other artists who were involved with the commission. Lena Horne would be a honorary chair of the commission. Leontine Price was an honorary chair of the commission. And the active workers included Ruby Dee and a series of other people who were actively involved in the meetings, in the planning of the work. As a volunteer public service organization, we proceeded to raise money. We went into partnership with several different people. And then Delta Sigma Theta membership made contributions to the film. And these were separate funds of the sorority raised specifically for the film. They were not a part of the sorority's regular budget and income.
I have a copy of my receipt. And I donated $700, and the date is 1974. And the check was made out to DST Telecommunications, and it's just proof that I had confidence in Lillian P. Benbow and all of those connected with this film.
I graduated from high school in 1976, and I remember that my mother, Marcelyn Cobbs Jefferson, who was a member of the Delta Sigma Theta Los Angeles alumni chapter, was active in helping to promote the movie, and she was selling tickets, and she was to the movie. She probably made some sort of contribution to the production fund, and she was also selling various kinds of memorabilia that they had available at the time. And one of the things that they were selling was this T-shirt that I've kept since the time of the movie in 1976. So it was a very important thing, and I'm so glad that I still have this T-shirt. And then I also have the soundtrack album as well. There's a few of these probably around, but there's not that many of them around. And Mano Dibango, a French African from the Congo who lives in Paris, was a major artist on this album, and I really like his work. So it's kind of special from that standpoint for me.
Generally speaking, people were giving their money. They knew that if they gave it, they might not get it back. We did not promise that it would be a success. There were no promises other than we knew that we had well-recognized actors and actresses who were going to perform in a film, and that we knew we had a problem with the media and the portrayal of the black condition in the United States as well as in Africa. So therefore we were going forward with an idea that we thought had high acceptance.
It was decided that we need to bring the awareness of the struggle in Africa and freedom, and then how it even relates to us, and as we struggle with freedom. This is a classroom study guide. This study guide includes a description of the real people that this movie was based upon. There's a history of the country, history of the revolution, and it goes so far as to ask about the leadership of each one of the characters in the movie. What part did the woman play in this movie, and what was her leadership in it, which was very important. The questions were very well written, and it was just a wonderful concept, because we are a service sorority, and part of our service is to the education, not only of our children, but the community.
When Ruby and Ossie became involved, of course, and they had the resource, direct contact. They had a son-in-law who was a Nigerian and who was involved in playwriting and film, etc. It was an avenue that they sort of suggested to us as the story was evolving, like we have a story.
Their son-in-law, Laddie Ladebo, has acquired the script for this film. And so he's acting as producer as well. So you've got sort of the Davis family involved in this film.
And they had the contacts in Africa, in Nigeria particularly.
I remember that George was very excited about it. And he was really excited about going to Africa and working with Ossie Davis. Particularly going to Africa, he had always dreamt about that.
when we first went to Africa, Al Freeman was playing a major role as an actor. And while he was there, he became ill and was unable to continue. And we had to replace him. And so a big portion of the filming done had to be redone in Nigeria. So it necessitated an extra trip of everybody to Africa. And that was one of the big cost issues that occurred.
My father took his family to Africa, all 5 of us, well 4 of us, 3 kids and my mom. My dad was, he was a wonderful man, and it was very important to him that we have this experience and go to Nigeria.
And once George was there, he started, sending me letters saying, it's really tough here. It's hard to get anything done. They weren't really set up professionally in Lagos to film and certainly not to edit. But they had started shooting and they were just not set up for the editing. But eventually they did get a cutting room set up, and I think he was probably editing there for about a month, and I don't remember how long the editing process took. But he started in Nigeria and finished in New York.
The film itself is a complicated film. It is a transnational film. The shooting of the film took longer than had been expected. There was more than one trip to Nigeria. That was costly as well. So there was a lot of additional fundraising that was necessary. Ossie Davis was so committed to this project that he reaches into his own pocket to support this effort that he was wholly committed to. In the end, upwards of $1.2 million was invested in Countdown at KUSINI.
If you are a person who is interested in film, a person who knows how important it is to set agendas, to create images, it's just more than mere entertainment, then I think you have more interest, more enthusiasm, I guess a feeling of this could be great for us, because it means taking a step out to the business world and being a new kind of sorority.
The Countdown at KUSINI folks were in the same boat with most of us who were coming into cinema and think we're discovering, Columbus discovered America stuff. In the 1940s, 30s, African-American filmmakers began the four-walling history. Oscar Micheaux was the principal originator of four-walling movies. So those folks could have referred to Oscar Micheaux's technique to four-wall Countdown at KUSINI.
The big plan for distribution was to use the resources of the sororities to support the distribution of the movie. In that, I'm saying that we plan to use a method called four-walling, wherein the chapters would support the release of the movie and opening of the movie in the various cities.
So what was anticipated was that you would get a lot of Delta traffic for sure, and it is the largest sorority, so we're talking about tens of thousands of Deltas who are also then bringing their friends and their families to support this film. You do that, a simple approach to the distribution of the film, you make back your money and you probably get some profit.
But often we think going with the mainstream, to be sanctioned by the mainstream, to let Hollywood put its stamp on us, we feel is the way out, because deeply rooted is our colonial mindset. You know, even us, you know, we wanted a Hollywood distributor to take it until we realized how insulting the journey was.
When we first heard about distribution, we understood distribution. And when we heard that Columbia Pictures would be that company to take care of distribution, we thought, okay, Columbia Pictures, they've been around for a long time, and they should know how to get this film into different venues across the country. And so we, especially me, wonder what happened. You know, what really happened? Where was the breakdown? And I never got any answers, and I don't know any other Delta women who did.
We had difficulty with the distribution of this film. Why do you think that was? Just imagine, had we been successful on our own, maybe not even needing a big company to distribute this, what would that have done to the movie industry?
When chapters were preparing to release the films, receive the films in the cities, and get the theaters full of people, that's what you're supposed to do in forewalling, I guess, the persons with the distribution responsibilities made a plan and just released the films in the cities without the coordination that would have been important to make it successfully forewall.
Every chapter could have had a screening. Members from those chapters would have attended, and at the cost of a film at that particular time, the movie would have made quite a bit of money, and it would have been a financial success. But because it was prevented from being distributed as normal film, as Hollywood films are, as basically films are distributed among the theaters, then it didn't have a chance.
And at the same time, whatever agreement had been made that we probably didn't understand as well with home box office, after a couple of weeks, the home box office aspect of that agreement kicked right in, and they sold it off to home box office. Columbia Studios, the contract we made, was sold off to home box office. Then people were telling us they're seeing it on home box office all over the country, and it just sort of fizzled.
You hear bits and pieces of, see, we shouldn't have done that, or I knew we were biting off more than we could chew, or we're not filmmakers. Comments by individuals to me were made.
When we even talk about what we did in the sorority, there is not the real identification of the value of and the courage and the vision that came out of this particular effort. We just celebrated a 100-year anniversary, and I had to look hard to see recognition of the contributions that were really pioneering that we did.
Countdown at KUSINI was not a profit-making venture, and it doesn't seem that the sorority wants to revisit even a discussion about the film. And as the old saying goes, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan.
Lillian Benbow had completed her 2 terms, which is the limit of the president's tenure in office in Delta.
There was a two-way street that was going on there in terms of the failure of the film, because we can't just put it all on Columbia.
After the change of the executive board, the negativeness from the new people coming into office was not a fair judgment and fair action towards what had already been done.
The organization chose to fold up in terms of the distribution after Columbia said they're not taking it any further. They owned it, Delta owned it. There are other things that they could have done with it too, if they had had the leadership in the organization to do it.
There was direct campaigning within the organization to eliminate people who had been involved with the arts and letters and with the Countdown at KUSINI program. I happened to be a product of that because I had run for another office in the sorority and was defeated by a group of people who supported a different approach and were working against this activity that we had.
But the movie was an investment of multiple folds. It was not just purely an economic investment where the organization was looking to make money. It was an investment in education, political awareness, and economic development. And so from that standpoint, it was a success.
You can talk. Matapo is at Malawi Junction. He will leave there by train tomorrow afternoon, and I'll be with him. The most convenient place to make the pickup is at KUSINI. KUSINI? Yes, KUSINI. 50 miles beyond Malawi. And by the way, Matapo's main contact in Fahari is a man called Koladeli. Koladeli? Koladeli. That something should be done about. He lives at 36 Epako Street. 36 Epako Street? Yes. I'll take care of it. Make sure you
do. So let's talk about the legacy of Countdown at KUSINI. Ossie Davis and the sorority go to Nigeria to make this film, and that requires them to set up an infrastructure, a filmmaking infrastructure in the country. So they make the film, they edit the film there, they are using local talent both around production and editing, but also acting. When it's time to leave Nigeria, they're not packing everything up. They're leaving a lot of materials and equipment and certainly the training and the skill set behind. In fact, what we see is the emergence, the rise of Nollywood, Nigerian Hollywood in Lagos, where filming took place. What I would like to believe, I would love this theory to be true, is that as a result of the efforts of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and the film Countdown at KUSINI, that they were, in some ways, the mothers of Nollywood.
Countdown at KUSINI was just a beginning. However, the voice was truncated. So we are the losers, really we are. And I think if you show that film again, and if the film is brought to the attention of the public, we will understand. We will understand greatly about a dream that was deferred.
Again, I'm still today inspired by the effort, the courage, and the ambition of Delta Sigma Theta marshaling all their resources together to put this film out.
Just imagine, DST, telecommunication, we could have been a powerhouse, producing a movie, 85,000 women, bigger than Oprah and Om, bigger than Tyler Perry. Oh, just the thought of it gives me chills.